You wake to a sharp tap. No alarm clock, no smartphone jingle, just the unmistakable ping of a long pole rapping against your bedroom window. It's barely light out, and your eyes still feel pasted shut. But yes, that's your morning call. Not from an electronic device, not even from a rooster. No, you've hired a professional knocker-upper. And before your modern mind leaps to any saucy assumptions, let's be clear. This is a person, usually with impeccable punctuality and disturbingly high enthusiasm for mornings, whose entire job is to make sure other people wake up on time by poking their windows with a stick. You're in Victorian London now, where punctuality means survival, especially if you're slogging through endless hours at the mill or down in the soot of a textile factory. The Industrial Revolution has made time a commodity, and nobody trusts themselves to wake up naturally anymore. Enter the knocker-upper, a walking, tapping, sleep-thwarting human snooze button. Their tool of choice, often a long bamboo rod, perfect for reaching second-story panes, or, if you were wealthier, or perhaps just extremely light sleeping, a short stick and some pebbles would do the trick. The most famous of them all might be Mary Smith, a cheerful East End character who used a pea shooter to hit windows with uncanny accuracy. You can picture her, can't you? Apron on, ammunition pouch slung like a bandolier, cheeks puffed as she aims a dried pea at a baker's dusty glass. Thwip. Rise and shine, Reginald. You might wonder, who wakes up her? That, oddly, is a matter of ongoing historical curiosity. Some accounts suggest knocker-uppers relied on natural early rising, or made pacts with other early risers in a sort of pre-dawn daisy chain of accountability. Others speculate their own children doubled as pint-sized alarm clocks, which, if you've met a Victorian toddler, seems likely. But no one really knows. Payment varied. Sometimes it was a few pennies a week, sometimes just leftover bread or tea. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, especially in a time when entire careers could hinge on your ability to show up on the dot. And unlike factory bosses, the knocker-upper worked quietly and efficiently. Well, unless you were their seventh client on a rainy Tuesday, and they had to chuck a rock. There's a certain joy in imagining a whole city quietly stirred by these odd figures. Some wielding poles, others pea shooters, and in rare cases, a kind of proto-megaphone. These weren't officials or clergy. They were mostly elderly women, men unfit for heavier labor, or enterprising youths. The job may seem funny now, but it was a lifeline for many. Also, let's be honest, you're just slightly jealous you've never been paid to disturb people at dawn with dried legumes. As factory whistles and clock towers gradually took over, the knocker-upper faded into quaint history. But for a solid stretch of the 19th century, they were essential. Every bit as real and relied upon as your modern Google Calendar notification. The practice lingered longer than you'd expect, with scattered reports even into the 1920s. Some urban historians argue this overlap is underdocumented. After all, how do you archive a job that disappears at sunrise? Still, something about it sticks with you. Maybe it's the image of a little old lady aiming a pea shooter at a banker's third-floor window, then cheerfully tottering down cobblestones to her next target. Or maybe it's the thought that in a world without digital anything, someone cared enough to wake you up for work with a stick. Now that you're properly awake, thanks Mary and your magical pea shooter, it's time to take a stroll through the fog-choked streets of Victorian London. Watch your step. That puddle might be water, or something far less poetic. As you edge past a ragged child hawking roasted chestnuts and a man furiously polishing a lamppost in daylight, odd choice, really, you encounter the hidden engine of this city's strange economy. The jobs so grim, bizarre, or oddly specific that people rarely talk about them, unless, of course, they're trying to lull you into slumber with Victorian trivia. Let's start with the mudlarks. You crouch at the edge of the Thames, and there they are. Children, mostly, scraping through the thick sulfurous muck for anything remotely valuable. Coins, nails, bits of rope, lost buttons, unmentionable squishy things. Whatever the river burped up that morning. You pick something up. It squelches. You drop it. The mudlarks don't. For them, it's survival, not sanitation. By midday, their hands are stained, their boots are soaked, and if they're lucky, they've found enough scrap to sell for a stale pie. According to more romantic Victorian observers, this was considered enterprising spirit. Today we'd call it child labor, with bonus tetanus. You continue along the embankment, nose twitching from the bouquet of coal smoke, dead fish, and optimism. Just ahead, a man with a sack slung over his shoulder pauses near a pub, then quietly slips inside. You follow. Inside, he loosens the sack and out pops a rat. Alive. Annoyed. Possibly named. This gentleman is a rat catcher, and this pub, it's hosting a rat baiting match, one of the more questionable entertainments of the era. Rat catchers, like Jack Black, no, not that one, were known for their flair. Some wore uniforms. Others claimed to be royal appointees. Most, however, simply roamed the city with trained terriers and a disturbingly strong immune system. They'd catch rats for hire, especially from places like bakeries, workhouses, or anywhere else people pretended not to notice the scratching behind the walls. Then, instead of disposing of them, they'd sell the liveliest ones to sport venues or curious rich folk who wanted to own the fiercest sewer rat in Southwark. Historians still debate how widespread this practice really was, but there's enough written record to suggest it was more than urban legend, and less than ethical. Now, brace yourself, because we're about to get creepier. Take a late evening turn near a graveyard, just for ambiance. And you might run into a pair of well-dressed men with shovels and an unsettling air of efficiency. These are the resurrection men, specialists in exhuming freshly buried bodies for educational purposes. Medical schools were booming, cadavers were scarce, and the law only allowed the dissection of executed criminals, which, it turns out, was not enough supply for all the eager young doctors hoping to poke a spleen before breakfast. So, if someone happened to know when Mrs. Worthington was being buried, and also happened to be unusually fast with a spade, well, the ethics of this are murky. Many argue that body snatching, though illegal, played a grimly vital role in advancing anatomy and surgical training. Others suggest the desperation of these resurrection men has been over-dramatized by sensationalist press at the time. But either way, you get the sense that the line between criminal and contract worker was thin, especially if you wore a cravat while doing it. And let's not forget chimney sweeps. You've likely heard of them, probably from a musical where they break into joyful song. Real-life chimney sweeps, however, mostly didn't sing. They coughed, a lot. And most were children, forced to wriggle up narrow flues coated in soot, armed with little more than a brush and the hope of not getting stuck. Some flues were so tight they'd send boys up naked. If they got stuck, well, let's just say tea time was ruined. Over time, public outrage led to reforms, but the job persisted well into the 19th century, especially in poorer neighborhoods. The long-term health effects were dire, but then again, so was pretty much everything involving soot in Victorian London. So there you are, standing in the middle of a city that somehow functions on a web of jobs no one brags about at dinner. Jobs that smell like fish guts, involve suspicious sacks, or require a highly specialized stick. A city where your worth might be measured by how many rats you've charmed, or how quickly you can tug a child from a chimney. Still, there's something weirdly comforting in all this grime and grit. You get the sense that everyone, mudlark, rat catcher, knocker-upper, or sweep, is just trying to make it to the next foggy morning. And honestly, in a world where someone once got paid to poke bankers with bamboo, your weird gig seems a little more normal now.